Welcome, my dear friends, for this FP live program. The pen is mightier than the sword is the finest proverb for this Indian freedom fighter and poet. His speech and poems were making even the parliamentarians in the House of Commons to panic. His passionate speech and words brought many youngsters out of their comfort zone and to fight for freedom. He is Subramanya Bharatiyar, and he was also called as Mudashi Kavingar. My dear friends, we are from All India Mahila Samskritika Sangam. We are going to organize a program on the great poet Subramanya Bharatiyar today evening. Actually, if you see, whole society is in deep crisis. Everywhere darkness, hungry children and poor, frustration. Crores of unemployed youth are frustrated and peasant suicides. Unexplainable miseries of women and girls. Degeneration of moral ethical values. We cannot live like this. We want a way out. We have to search in past. What great men said and did. How they approached the life. How they solved the problems of their period. So we have to walk in their footprints and we have to find new solutions to the new problems. So we have to go to Isha Chandra Vidyasagar, Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyaya, Premchand, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Bhagat Singh, Sri Sri, Subramanya Bharatiyar, and to so many. For this evening talk, we have invited Comrade Radhakrishna, Politburo member, Socialist Unity Center of India, Communist. Socialist Unity Center of India, Communist is founded by Subhash Ghosh. He is Marxist philosopher and he is applied Marxism and Leninism to Indian soil most efficiently, and he built up SUCI Communist in India, unlike CPI and CPM Naxalites. And SUCI is developing people's movements throughout the country, and it is very much seriously engaged in fighting individualism, which is capitalist philosophy and culture, and in its place, bringing about collectivism and working class common people's philosophy. And it is fighting uncompromisingly caste, religion, regional, gender discriminations. Ultimate aim is to establish socialism in Indian soil. And it's working in 24 states. And it is creating best sons and daughters in Indian soil with high communist culture. And it's a Politburo member, Comrade Radhakrishna, one among the 4 ranking leaders of Socialist Unity Center of India, Communist. Though he did his engineering in 70s in Chennai IIT, without caring for a minute for his career, he shouldered the responsibility to build up Socialist Unity Center of India, Communist for the emancipation of working class in India. And he did not look back. Now he lives in the hearts of thousands of workers, students, women, peasants. We are very much fortunate enough to have him this evening. Now I request him to speak on Subramanya Bharatiyar. I request him to please start the program.
Thank you, Comrade Lalita. And good evening to all those who are on this Facebook live program. And I'm very much honored by the invitation by All India Mahila Sangatne they have invited me for this talk on this great poet, Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati. I feel very much honored. And the fact is to admit, though I had heard some sketchy details about Subramanya Bharati, I was not that thorough with his thought or his struggle or his life. Many things I was not aware. And I should really thank the All India Committee of All India Mahila Sangatne. This gave me an opportunity and threw light on the personality of Subramanya Bharati. And to tell you all, he did not live for long. He lived hardly for 39 years. But whatever I came to know about him, his thoughts, his ideas, his writing, apart from his poetry, for which he is very well known, I felt he is a colossus, very giant personality, very extraordinary personality. I was amazed. Such a personality is of a national character, even international. Such a giant personality is, and in his thoughts. Why? Let me also throw light on that. I don't know how much justice I can do to this personality. I should say I am really honored to pay tribute to him on this occasion. But how much justice I can do, I don't know. Because he is so voluminous. His writings, his poetry, his essay, his stories. So much is there to study. Friends and comrades, what I like to start with is in what condition he made his appearance. As we are taught by our beloved leader, teacher and guide, Comrade Shivdas Ghosh, a giant Marxist philosopher, while evaluating the great storyteller, the great literator, Sharat Chandra Chatterjee, Comrade Shivdas Ghosh told that while evaluating a personality, a literator, or a poet, we should keep the space-time condition in mind. In which condition he appeared, what context he has appeared. And in that context, what were the evils before him, what he had to fight. And which are the features supposed to be progressive. We have to keep that in mind. That's what he taught us. And in that background, I should say, Subramanya Bharati, he took birth in the year 1882 and he died in the year 1921. 1882 in Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu, now we call it Tamil Nadu. Earlier it was Madras Presidency. That time he took birth in Tirunelveli, 1882. And that is in a very remote village he took birth. And that time, 19th century, even the Indian independence struggle has not begun. It began much later. But that was the period of social reforms and renaissance in India. And so far as the renaissance started in India, majorly in those places where there was a direct British rule. And as far as I know, at that time, there were 14 provinces directly under the British. And as far as I know, there were presidencies like Madras Presidency, Calcutta Presidency, then Bombay Presidency. And that time, entire Tamil Nadu, what we call today, that entire region, and parts of Kerala, parts of Karnataka, parts of Andhra Pradesh, then even Orissa, all came under Madras Presidency. It was the direct rule of the British. Just like in Calcutta, there was direct rule of the British. So also in Mumbai, there was direct rule of the British. And wherever there was direct rule of the British, rebellion came. Anti-imperialist freedom struggle broke out there. And even the Renaissance movement started there. And the then existing Tamil Nadu, or what I told Madras Presidency, the movement started, say in Tirunelveli and many other places. I can recall the names of Vivo Chidambaram, Subramanya Shiva, apart from Subramanya Bharati. And I should say he was the pioneer of the Renaissance movement, as far as my knowledge goes. I repeat, I request even the Tamil Nadu people and our comrades there, if I am wrong anywhere, they have got every liberty to correct me. I request them. I may be wrong also on many facts. But what I like to highlight is in the then existing British condition, in India there was still feudal condition, steeped deep in superstitions, obscurantism, religious bigotry, and in India, there was casteism. The caste layer was there, casteism was there. All these type of superstition, everything was there. And in that background, the Subramanya Bharati has taken birth in Tirunelveli. And as the history shows, his mother passed away by the age of 5. But by that time, he has exhibited such talent. Whatever he talks, he can talk in a poetry, in a poetic manner. Such an excellence, such a talent at this young age. That's why by the age of 11, his teacher called him Bharati. His name was Subramanya. And looking at his scholarship, he was so scholarly, he was given the title of Bharati. From that time onwards, he is known as Subramanya Bharati. Bharati because he is the symbol of knowledge, such a talent, like Saraswati. That's why he was called Bharati, so Subramanya Bharati. And he started writing poetry, then he started writing prose, then he started writing essay, he started excelling. And we all know that his father, he was running a factory, and because of the British, they cheated him, they defrauded him, then the factory had to be closed. By the time of 15 years, he lost his father also. Then his maternal uncle, he took him to Kashi. And there he put him in a school, he studied there. Later on, he shifted to Allahabad. He went for his graduation in Allahabad. But I don't think he concluded his studies there. But he studied English and Sanskrit while he was in Kashi, that is Varanasi. Then he came back to Tamil Nadu and took up a job. And here I like to highlight that after getting English education and after seeing the social condition, steeped neck deep in casteism, superstition, everything, there was such rebellion in him. He started writing against all these things. And already the impact of modern thoughts were there. Western civilization, through English, he came across. The European Renaissance was completed by that time. Its impact was there. Then he started demanding for unity of the people. He started fighting casteism vigorously. And he started writing poems, poetry after poetry. He started condemning. And we should know he was born in a Brahmin family. And he started condemning Brahminism, their casteism. And that actually there was one association, Brahmin association. Even he used to go there and condemn them that you are sectarian. And all through he told that the people should be united. We should fight against all evils. And friends, I should say this is the way he started and becoming very much matured in his views, in his thoughts. Then he started telling that casteism is a curse in India. He started writing poetry after poetry. And even when he was engaged, he started taking a job in a newspaper. And the newspaper, he started working as an editor. One newspaper by name India, he was editing. And that became a very popular newspaper. He used his pen, as Comrade Lalita, while introducing Subramanya Bharati, she told pen is mightier than the sword. And he started practicing journalism. In that he started criticizing the British imperialism vehemently, opposed. Then he joined the Congress. And all these names, what I told, V.O. Chidambaram, Subramanya Shiva, and Subramanya Bharati, they all joined the Congress. And from the platform of Congress, they were preaching for national independence. And all three fought for all India unity. And he was telling everybody should unite. There should not be division among the people. And even he used to invite Harijans to his house. And frankly telling, one Harijan boy, he went and he put his that sacred cross thread, what he was wearing, he threw away his cross thread. He was born in a Brahmin family. But he called a Harijan to his house. And even he put the cross thread around him. He was such rebellious. Then he joined the Congress. And he went to even Calcutta in 1908 to attend the conference of the Congress party. Even in Surat he attended the conference. But a division had come. The division was compromising, uncompromising, two trends. And there, Tilak and Bipin Chandra Pal, they represented the uncompromising trend. And they were telling that we have to fight for our freedom. And we have to take up sword. Only by using sword we should fight. We should use violent means because the British is oppressing us. And that kind of an idea, Subramanya Bharati was very much attracted. He did not go for non-violent means. He was not for a compromise. He was for the uncompromising trend. So even in the Calcutta Congress conference, he sided with Tilak and Bipin Chandra Pal. This is the way the history goes. And friends, what I like to highlight here is his thoughts, his preaching, his essay writing, his poetry. We say that he represented the youthful secular humanist ideas. And what is secular humanist ideas? Today in our country there is a lot of confusion regarding secularism or regarding humanism. There are so many confusions. And we know that in our country the Congress was led by Mahatma Gandhi and his followers. And according to them, secularism meant equal encouragement to all religions. And there, our beloved leader, teacher and guide, Comrade Shiv Das Bose, he pointed out equal encouragement to all religions means India will become a multi-theocratic state. Because if you call Pakistan a theocratic state, it is a theocratic state because from the state plane, they encourage Islam. So they are called as a theocratic state. In India, if the state supports all the religions, then it is a multi-theocratic state. That is why Comrade Shiv Das Bose recalled the teachings of the European Renaissance. What is the meaning of secular? Secular means worldly, nothing to do with spiritualism. That means whether religion or spiritualism, it is a matter of personal belief or disbelief. Whether you believe in any religion or not, it is left to your personal belief. And that should not poke its nose in the political affairs, in matters of governance. The state should be completely freed from the clutches of religion or caste. That is the concept of secular humanism, what came first in Europe. Because before that, in feudalism, every king practiced one or the other religion. In Europe, it may be Christianity. India, it is Hinduism or Islam. Or in the Arab countries, it is Islam. Or in Sri Lanka or China, it is Buddhism. Religion, the king practiced religion. So, the state itself was highly religious. But secular means keeping religion away from state affairs. It is not to poke its nose into the affairs of the personal belief, matters of personal belief and disbelief. That is the starting point of secularism, meaning we are concerned only with worldly affairs, economics, politics. We are concerned with this. This is a matter of belief, is private affair. If somebody believes in Hinduism or Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Jainism, you practice at home or you go to your temple, you go to masjid. But that is not supposed to be brought into the affairs of governance. And so also, when there is a nationalist movement growing, freedom struggle is growing, in India, anti-imperialist, anti-feudal struggle is going on, as what happened in Europe or what happened in America, it is expected that the Indian independence movement would have upheld secular humanist ideals, the banner of secular humanism. That should have been the right course. But what happened? Though I am talking of a period after Subramanya Bharati, I am coming to that, because in India, we find in Bengal, Rajaram Mohan Rai was the initiator of this Renaissance movement in Bengal. We say in India, but in Bengal he came first, because of those days there was no Indian state. India was not yet a nation. Even when the British India was there, British government, the direct rule of the British kingdom came to India in the year 1857. And later on, up to 1947, in India, there are, as far as I know, there are 14 provinces directly ruled by the British presidency, British government, directly under British government. All the others, no less than about 580 to 600, there were princely states which were subservient to the British government. Direct rule of the British government is only 14 provinces. Rest about 580 princely states. They were governed by kings, and the kings were subservient to the British government. They'll pay their taxes, they'll pay their dues to the British, and they'll surrender completely to the British government. And the British government allowed them to be in power. We find this type of thing at that time. So, Subramanya Bharati appeared in during those days in Madras presidency, that is directly under the British rule. What I mean to say is, most part of India of those days was under feudal rule, under rule of the kings. Only certain parts were directly under the British, where they defeated the kings and then they had the control of those provinces. What I mean to say here is, those days in India, it was actually feudal culture prevailing, feudal social atmosphere prevailing, feudal culture, feudal ethics, feudal morality, though decadent, rotten. But that was the atmosphere. On one hand, there is British rule, on the other hand, there is feudalism. Even economy, politically, feudalism was there. Kings were there. During those days, what has come is Renaissance. I like to go back to Europe. In Europe, all there was a feudal rule, and the Renaissance began. With Renaissance, the birth of capitalism took place, and there is a new awakening with new thoughts, new culture, new ethics. It is a new ideology. While religion, people practiced, while the state also practiced religion. Yes, there were values in religion, there were ethics and morality in religion. Once religion inspired man to fight against injustice of those days, earlier days, at the time of Buddha, at the time of Jesus Christ, at the time of Muhammad Paigambar. We find that religion inspired man to fight against injustice. But with the growth and development of feudalism, and gradually started becoming old, as a system grows, develops, becomes old, just like a man takes birth, grows, becomes old. So also every system has got a birth, period of growth and development, then dying. So also feudalism, when the condition came for dying, again within the womb of feudalism, capitalism started taking birth. The capital formation, capitalist economy, or handicrafts, the bourgeois economy, what they say, bourgeoisie, traders, it started taking birth. That's what precisely what happened in Europe, in England, in France, French Revolution, German Peasants' War. Industrial Revolution in England, or American War of Independence, we find all these things. Is a switch over to a new system, higher system. That is capitalism. And capitalism cannot be based upon religion. Religion was the ideology during feudal rule. It was based on ideology of religion. Now a new system is emerging, new political economic system, new social system, that is capitalism. It cannot depend upon religion. Days of religion and feudalism is over. Now it is based on the new aspirations. And the new aspirations are aspirations of the rising bourgeoisie, bourgeois class. And their aspirations is to establish individual control over means of production, development of industry, modern industry. So also to encourage science, technology. They wanted a new ideology altogether. Through that, they wanted to increase production and go and develop the society. They want a new culture, new ethics, new morality. And that was the ideology, what we say, humanism. In short, in precisely, it is called bourgeois humanism, where human being is the supreme man, supreme being. He is the center of focus of development. Focus of development is not religion or God. Yes, it is a matter of personal belief or disbelief. But humanism focused on the individual human being, his development, because they wanted individual control of means of production. Along with that, they wanted individual of development of individual. That's why they fought for the ideals of individual freedom, equality, liberty, fraternity, along with that liberation of women. These were the noble most ideas which germinated in Europe, whether in England, France or Germany, or later on in America, everywhere. That was the new awakening. And friends, as far as I understand, same thing has happened in Bengal with Raja Ram Mohan Roy, then Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So also in Tamil Nadu of today. Of those days, I am telling, today is Tamil Nadu. Those days it was Madras presidency. Well, Subramanya Bharati came, along with them so many came. They started upholding the ideals of secular humanism. Just like in the European context, it was Rousseau, it was Voltaire, it is Shakespeare. All these people came. Or we find in America, it was Abraham Lincoln. They uphold these democratic values, democratic ethics, what we call secular humanism. So they did not want any role of religion in matters of the state. So friends, that means they wanted a new culture, new ethics, new morality. And so also, Subramanya Bharati appeared on the horizon. He is not just a man of Tamil or Tamil Nadu. As far as I understand, he belongs to entire humanity. He must be considered as a national poet. He is a national figure in the sense of his thoughts, as nascent as those. He was upholding secular humanist thought. So, he was deeply pained looking at the questions of casteism, untouchability. In simple words, he explains, one man and man, why there is such gap? Why you can't touch another man? Man is man. All men belong to the same species. Then why this gulf? Why this distinction? Why this upper and lower caste? I cannot accept it. It is impermissible. All should be treated equally. By birth, nobody should be treated as unequal. It is humiliating. It is degrading. It is not manhood. Subramanya Bharati keeps on writing about those things. As I told you, he is opposed to casteism. There very precisely, I should say, is standing by humanism, secular humanism. He totally discards this question of caste, so also of religion. He does not believe in such things. Why? Subramanya Bharati speaks of the invasion by the Mohammedans in India. Mohammedans came maybe during the 12th century. Then later on the Europeans came. It may be British, it may be French, or it may be Portugal, Dutch, they all came and they attacked on the Indian culture. And there, he's so broad-minded. Why I'm raising these issues, friends? He is telling, yes, they came and attacked. Earlier it was Mohammedans, now the Britishers. They came and attacked us, then they suppressed us. They came to exploit our rich raw materials. Everything is true. They subjugated our country. Again, there are many things to be learned. There are so many people who get swayed by anger against the Mohammedans or Muslims. Because they came to India, they robbed our country. So they attacked our culture. Our culture is so pure. While Subramanya Bharati says, what we lost, Mohammedans came and we are benefited by the rich aspects of their culture. We have absorbed, we have become enriched. And so also he says, Britishers have come, they are ruling us. Their culture, there is attack on us. But should we see only negative? Why shall we not see that the best aspects of British culture, Western culture, why shall we not absorb? By absorbing the best of every culture, our culture gets enriched. Here is the broadness of man. He is not having any personal animosity against the Mohammedans or against the British. He is telling we are enriched. Our culture got enriched. And there, depth of this man is to be understood. What from my understanding I am telling, that there are so many superficial type of arguments. Even in today in society, we come across these type of arguments that we should oppose Western culture. Our culture is very pure. Ours is Aryan culture or Hindu culture, ancient culture, and ours is the ancient most culture. Everything may be true. Ancient is civilization. Maybe ancient civilization. What's of that? There, many of them are there, many people are there, many ideologies are there, very backward ideologies. They say ours is a very pure culture and we should not allow ourselves to be attacked by the foreign invasion of foreign civilization. Now there, what has got Subramanya Bharati to comment on this? Astonishingly, he has got such clarity of thought. Some people at that time, they were propagating, we should oppose Western culture. Why? They say, because women in Europe, they smoke, they take drinks, and even they cut their hair. So, we should oppose Western culture. We have nothing to accept from Western culture. Subramanya Bharati is so scathing and so deep. He is telling this very, very superficial. This is not Western culture. Why you are confusing the question? He is telling. Even this, the drinks. Drink was there in the India also, ancient India. And we find even in our this Puranas, mythologies, we find there Surpana is there, Surpan is there, taking drinks is there. Why are blaming the Europe? Why are blaming the British? And smoke, yes, smoking is also not from Europe. He is telling, smoking started from China. From China it went to Europe. Europeans picked up from China. For that also you can't hold Europeans responsible. And cutting hair. There Subramanya Bharati is so scathing. He is condemning all those who are making this type of analysis. He is saying this very, very simplistic view. You are not at all critical. You should look to dharma. What is dharma? Dharma means he is telling the essence. There he is telling, so far as the women's issue is concerned, look to European culture, their men and women are considered equal. The dignity of women, both should be treated on par. equally. You pick up that. We want that in India. Is it there in India? Men and women, how they are treated. There's so much of discrimination. Men are superior, women are inferior. You try to pick up that part of that Western culture. But all these habits, don't confuse that to be culture. These are all habits. There is telling, for various reasons, many practices coming in the society is so critical, astonishingly critical. How critical this he could be, I don't know. He is telling that many such practices are there in various countries during various times. And don't confuse culture to be part of that practice. Practice or habits are something, and the culture is something. There he gives his own example. I went to study in Kashi, and I am from this Tamil Nadu. I was shaving my mush, and my classmates used to be there in high school. Many of them came from Bengal or UP, Bihar, everywhere, and they were not shaving their mush. I found every day when I go to the school, they are talking among themselves, looking at me. They are gossiping something. I could not understand what it is. Then one day I asked my friend, what is that you people talk to each other? Then very hesitantly asked me, is it that every day somebody in your family is dying? I told him, no. Why every day somebody will die? Then he says, no, in our region, we shave the mush only when some close relative dies. And every day you are shaving and coming. We were thinking every day somebody is dying. Then Subramaniam Bharati smiled. He told, no, this is the practice in our state. I come from province of Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, we shave our mush. This is the practice. Maybe in your area, it is not the practice. You don't shave. Shaving means that somebody has died. He is giving this example. He is telling, though we believe in the same religion, practices are different. In various regions, the rituals are different. Ritual is different from the belief or culture. There is telling, we are to look to the essence of things, not superficial. Anyway, comrades and friends, what I am telling is how critical he was. He understood this distinction so well. What is culture and what is ritual? And he never confused with the rituals or never confused. I simply remember the teachings of Comrade Shivdas Ghosh. Comrade Shivdas Ghosh has got a chapter on this. Comrade Shivdas Ghosh is telling that rituals keep changing, though belief in religion remains same. That's why he says many of the practices and rituals keep changing with the times. What rituals were there about 100 years back, 1000 years back, those rituals keep on changing. But the belief question remains same. Believe in religion or something. Like once upon a time, the Brahmins were called upon to have a tuft in their head. Now they don't practice it. So many rituals, they keep changing. This is Shastras. They keep changing. That itself is not the culture of that society, of that religion. These practices keep changing. That's why Comrade Shivdas used to tell Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he never went to the mosque to pray. But everybody knows he is a Muslim leader. He practiced Islam. He believed in Islam. He might not have practiced all the rituals, what is supposed to be practiced in Islam. For that reason, Muslim people did not reject him simply because he did not practice all the rituals. That's why even Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to cast away his cross thread, sacred thread. He used to think, why? Why do I require the cross thread? I have already taken possession of Kali. I have won over Kali. Why do I require anyway these practices? Anyway, these are rituals and practices. I find very astonishingly, Subramanya Bharati was very much aware of these factors. That is why he was never blinded. Friends, why I am raising this issue today? Because not only all over the world, even in India, so much of fanaticism, blindness, superstition, all these are being so much encouraged. And many of the people get carried away. On the question of culture, this even Subramanya Bharati is talking of dressing, eating habits. He is telling, why do you attack these things? People have different eating habits. People have got different dressing habits. Don't try to attack them. These are matters of personal choice. There is very much opposed to these kind of attacks. We know in what kind of circumstances we are living today, what kind of reaction is growing in the society, and what kind of attacks are going on various communities. So there should be only one religion, one nation, one religion, one culture, monoculture, while India is a multilingual, multicultural society. So many languages, so many regions, so many multiple nationalities are there, speaking different languages, having so many faiths, having so many religions, but all are united, integrated on the question of Indianness. We belong to one country. We are patriots. We love our country, our nation. But that is, they are seeking to destroy that culture, destroy people's unity. Such kind of attacks are going on. In this background, the ideas and thoughts of Subramanya Bharati are of supreme importance according to me. I stand corrected, but according to me, I am simply enamored with the ideas of Subramanya Bharati. He is so critical. He is telling these are all bad things, evils. He is very much opposed to reactionary. There comes Shivdas Ghosh tells, what is reactionary? That which tries to bring stagnation in the society. That which tries to pull the society back. That is reactionary. What is progressive? That which tries to carry the society forward. That is progressive. In that yardstick, Subramanya Bharati stood out and out for progress of society, to carry the society forward. These are certain questions where he fought superstition, he fought casteism, he fought old ideas, and he even stood for enrichment of culture. But comrades, I understand this All India Mahila Sanghatan, they have organized this Facebook Live on Subramanya Bharati. I know they will be very much interested about the attitude of Subramanya Bharati towards women. And I should say, it is exceptional, outstanding, the way Subramanya Bharati fights for the cause of women's emancipation. It is very much outstanding, the way he fights for their cause. And he says there should be equality between the sexes, men and women. There cannot be anybody higher and anybody lower. So there should be equality. And he has got a charter for the women. I will just read out what are the points he raised. Charter for the women's freedom. One is, women should not be married off before puberty. Number two, women should not be compelled to marry a person whom they do not wish to marry. Friends, comrades, I am telling these are the writings of Subramanya Bharati more than 100 years ago. Those days of feudal background, under the jackboot of British imperialism, Subramanya Bharati is writing this charter. Third point is writing, provisions for divorce should be made for her, meaning women. She should not be humiliated for divorcing. not only should be provision for divorce, she should not be humiliated also for divorcing. Fourth point, there should be equal share for girls in ancestral property. Comrades, I think in India, this equal share is coming nowadays. In various states, they are bringing law, but Subramania Bharati demanded equal share in ancestral property for girls about 100 years ago. Fifth point, after the death of husbands, women should not be prohibited from remarrying. He is advocating for remarriage of widows, widow remarriage 100 years back. Sixth point, women should be allowed to earn livelihood by natural trade or employment if they wish to remain unmarried, and they should be allowed to live with dignity by doing some vending, bar trading or handicrafts. He is telling that women also should be educated, women also should be employed, they must be given employment, and if the women, they do not wish to get married, they should be allowed to remain unmarried, and they should be allowed to stand on their own feet. They should be employed. Employment should be given to them. Seventh one, condition imposed on them out of fear and jealousy, like they should not talk or associate with men other than husband, should be abolished. Friends, this type of feudal condition was there, that women should not talk to any man other than her husband. These kind of feudal conditions were there, and they were not permitted to talk to other men, leave alone the question of developing friendship. So they were not even allowed to go to the schools and colleges. These type of condition in Bengal, we had known how Vidyasagar fought. He fought for the education of girls, and Subramania Bharati also raised the same question, not only of going to school or anything. He is telling that condition should be removed. Women should be made to have friendship even with other men. It is very, very backward not to allow them to have talks with other men. Other men means other than husband. Eighth point, women should be educated in all branches of education of high quality on par with men. They should be educated up to the highest level. They should be given this condition, permission. And ninth one, law should not prohibit them if based on appropriate qualification, they want to enter into any post and position of governance. So comrades, he is advocating for entry of women into politics, even into governance, and if they are qualified, they should occupy any post and any position of governance. They should be allowed. And 10th point, in a situation where even men in Tamil Nadu do not have rights to participate in governance, there is no use in asking the same for women. Yet, if Tamils get Swaraj soon, then women too should be given share in governance rights. I think it's very clear. He is telling even men have no rights in governance under the British rule. And when tomorrow, when men get the right, even women also should be given the right for governance. And he is concluding, he is telling, thus, if we show the initial steps to our women, they will achieve their emancipation on their own efforts and save the mankind. Only then our women can attain the status enjoyed by the wives of ancient rishis. It is stupidity that we men try to become maharshis while treating our women like animals. If female does not ascend, male too cannot ascend. Friends, comrades, very, very clear. He is telling that treating women like animals, men cannot become maharshis. If you have to become maharshi, then you must see that the women are also uplifted, and that condition should be guaranteed. Anyway, there are many other concepts are prevailing during those days in feudal Tamil Nadu. I am reading about some other thing. Now, many shudder at the prospect that if women are liberated, all the 7 worlds above will surely fall on earth, and comets and such other celestial objects will get caught amidst this and grounded to powder. Go and ask the editor of Madras Mail. Madras Mail was the paper. What will happen if freedom is given to India? If India is given freedom, the editor replied, "Oh, if India is freed, Punjabis will kill Rajputs. Rajputs in turn will swallow the entire Marathis. Marathis will eat Telugu, Kannadigas and Malayalis. Then Malayalis will smash Tamil Brahmins. Tamil Brahmins will smash Dravidians. The smashed Dravidians will wear the bones of Bengalis or garland," and end with a sigh. So the editor of the paper is not at all in favor of freedom to India, because this is what is going to happen. Each will kill the other and eat them away. Now he is continuing. You ask the same question to Justice Mani Iyer, Keshava Pillai and Chidambaram Pillai. They were for freedom. No such dangers will happen. If we get Swaraj, our miseries will lessen. We will gain the capacity to bear if we have to face scarcity. Ultimately, death will go away. That's all. These are the people who stood for freedom. Similarly, those who say that there will be chaos in society, if women are given freedom, say so only because they are disgusted to see other fellow beings living as free beings and nothing else. What does freedom mean? What will be the condition of women if they are given freedom? What are to be done if women are to be freed? Shall we drive them out of homes? What actions to be taken? Many perhaps raise these questions. When such questions arise, we are led to inquiry into the root of the issue. What is freedom? It is easy to answer this question. Freedom means without injuring others, without beating, abusing, and killing others, without stealing the fruits of others' labor. Otherwise, doing whatever I am interested in. Only when I am such a state, I can be called as a free man. Doing whatever one wants without harming others is called freedom. Then he is writing, going by this rule, even majority of our men are not free. To achieve freedom in every country, men are struggling every day. The atrocities of subjugation of men to each other is intolerable, but 1,000 times more harm and miseries than those atrocities are caused due to the subjugation of women folk by men folk. Anyway, comrades, many such things are there, and he is quoting from mythology. He is telling that everybody believes in religion, and they all know our Indian mythologies. They admire the mythologies, but he is telling we find pairs like Vishnu and Lakshmi. There is Shiva and Parvati, and Brahma and Saraswati. They are married, they are couples. Have not heard of anywhere that Vishnu has beaten Lakshmi, or Shiva has beaten Parvati, or Brahma has beaten Saraswati. I have not heard. They are very much respected. Brahma, he wears Saraswati on his chest. He holds her there in high esteem. In our mythology, we find this. Where is wife beating? Where is torture on women? Where is killing of women? I don't find anyone in mythologies. Then why this type of rubbish thing should go on here? Then he raises the question of chastity. He says, yes, chastity should be there. It is universally, it should be there, meaning faithfulness should be there. But should it be one-sided? Is it to be imposed on women alone? What about men? Are you honest? He is raising the question directly to men. Are you honest to your wife? If you are not honest to your wife, how can you demand honesty, chastity from wife? He is fighting this double standard ruthlessly, mercilessly. He is attacking this concept of double standards. Many such writings are there where he is showing double standards of this patriarchal society, which was rampant in feudalism, and India even today is rampant. Such kind of double standards imposed on women, one set of rules for women, one set of rules for men. I've already read out the charter, Subramanya Bharati's charter for women. There is very, very categorical, very clear. He is wanting the same rights for women as those which are enjoyed by men. He says there is no difference. He says, other than physical difference, souls are same in his language. Soul is same. There is soul in men, there is soul in women. Why do you differentiate between men and women? Discriminate. Yes, differentiation is there. Men are different, women are different, biologically different. But why do you differentiate them? Discriminate against each other. It cannot be. You can't discriminate. You can't beat wife. You can't torture her, even for dowry, whatever it is. You cannot kill a woman or throw her out of the house. Anyway, so critically, everything what is in the society, going on in the society, is so much thorough. There, Subramanya Bharati is drawing attention of the society towards another thing. He says that under British India, he was during that period, he is telling Indians are in the habit of praising whatever comes from the West. And there he is giving the example of Vivekananda. He was an ardent devotee of Vivekananda. Though everything of Vivekananda he did not take. All thoughts of Vivekananda also he did not take. That is another matter. But he admired Vivekananda. Why? Only from this condition, Vivekananda also rebelled against the Britishers on the grounds of humiliation. They were the British, they humiliated Indians, they called Indians as dogs, fit to be chained. They mistreated the Indians. That humiliation, it created such a stir in Vivekananda. Then he started looking to the past. This is what our beloved leader, Comrade Shivdas Ghosh, told. He wanted to prove how great is India. So instead of looking to the future, as did Vidyasagar, as good Sarath Chandra Chatterjee, he started looking back. And there in one of the books, the great literator, Sarath Chandra Chatterjee, he is fighting Vivekananda's idea. Since Vivekananda started looking to the past and praising the glory of India, how the great India, ancient India is great. Regarding that, Sarath Chandra is asking, you see the glory of India, ancient past. If India was so great in the past, then later on, why India came under the jackboots of Mohammedans, Huns, then the Britishers? Why we came under their jackboots? And why the European civilization went ahead? In that novel, Sarath Chandra is telling that the British, you are great because your civilization is advanced more than us. But again, that very Sharath, his character is telling, you have become great, but you must know that we have got equal potential to be great. Potential to be equally great. So please quit from our country. We will develop on our own. We don't want you to stay here. He is asking him to get out. He is fighting. He is seeing the future. At the same time, Sharath is not looking to the past. However great might have been our past, ancient past, now it is no more there. Subramanya Bharati also talks of Maitreyi. There were such Gargi and Maitreyi, such great characters were there. He is showing even in the past we had great women characters. He admits this fact, acknowledges in India great women came once upon a time. But now we say the condition has changed. Under feudalism, they are chained. He is using the word ruthlessly. He is telling women are slaves here, no better than slaves. They are enslaved. They are enchained. They are to be freed. They are to be liberated. They are bound to the family. Their only job is procreation. Look after children, give birth to children, then look after the husband, family, go to the kitchen. This has become their life. But again, he is finding, during his time, he saw women like Annie Besant. He saw poet like Sarojini Naidu. He is saying Sarojini, she is a Bengali. She got married to one Naidu in Andhra Pradesh. She became Sarojini Naidu. She was Nightingale. She was a singer. And he says, Annie Besant has got to foreign countries. Now, Subramanya Bharati is telling that Vivekananda went to foreign country, America. He gave a speech in Chicago, some conference of religions, all these things, that was so attractive, so impressive. He became so popular and famous. Now Subramanya Bharati is telling, look towards this. Now Indians started recognizing Vivekananda because he made some impact in America. So all started admiring Vivekananda. He is telling to all women, you must get educated. You require knowledge. Pick up knowledge. Learn. Cultivate knowledge. Go to school. Go to college. Go for highest education. And with that, go to even foreign country and make a mark there. If you make a mark in foreign country, then Indians will listen to you. They'll start respecting you. You know, this is Subramanya Bharati. We can find urge. What is the great urge, deep urge in Subramanya Bharati? That women are to be respected. And he found the way. Only if you are highly knowledgeable, like Vivekananda or Sarojini Naidu or Annie Besant, you are making a mark in the society or go to foreign country, then the society will recognize you, acknowledge you, they'll respect you. So repeatedly he is telling that women should be educated and they should cultivate knowledge. Friends, many such writings are there. He is for equality between men and women should be educated, they should be employed, they should come out of their house, and is opposed to all the discrimination imposed upon women. I've already read out his charter regarding women. So, comrades, I started with the question regarding the concept of secular humanism. I am really telling personally, I am very much astounded. I was not aware of this. The great thoughts, what are there in Subramanya Bharati, his writings or his poetry. I have not heard much of his poetry. I have not studied, but he was a great poet. He is called Mahakavi. And much more than that, he is actually acknowledged as the pioneer of Tamil language, if I am not wrong. If I am wrong, I stand corrected. Whatever Tamil was there, earlier Tamil, this has happened to all Indian languages. Whatever ancient language was there, it was limited to the courts of the kings. So for common people, their language was different. So there, it was the struggle of Subramanya Bharati. He wrote in people's language. It becomes people's Tamil, modern Tamil. Nowadays, everybody uses that very Tamil, used by him. And what poetry he wrote, what poems he wrote. Even today, the songs are there in the movies. Everybody sings. What all poetry he wrote. Excellent poetry. Those poems. And many of the meetings, they start with his song, they end with his song. So, comrades, what I am telling is, he is the almost father of modern Tamil. He gave birth to modern because he was for people. He loved the people. He wanted to convey great thoughts to the people in their language. And to convey to them their language means he had to develop the language. He has developed the language. Of course, many others have come later on, they have developed. But the question comes, what about his politics? And he was, I told you, he was employed in a newspaper and he was ruthlessly fighting against the British imperialism and he stood with the revolutionaries of the uncompromising trend. And we know from Comrade Shiv Das Ghosh, thoughts of Shiv Das Ghosh, that the Indian freedom struggle, there are two trends, compromising and uncompromising. Of course, the compromising trend more or less became prominent after the arrival of Mahatma Gandhiji on the scene, more or less after the 1920s. I think by that time, Subramania Bharati, almost he died in 1921. Very painfully, there was some accident, one elephant, it stamped upon him. I think health got spoilt also. So as early as 39 years, he died. But anyway, what I am telling, 1921 he died. But before that, he has participated in the movements of the Congress. He took part in that, along with Chidambaram and others. And he went to attend the conference, as I told you. He was politically highly active. That is what Comrade Shiv Das Ghosh all through told, that whatever you talk, you should practice it. Simply talking, not practicing, that cannot carry weightage. And Subramania Bharati practiced whatever he preached. Another astounding feature of Subramania Bharati. Just like Sarath Chandra Chatterjee, he was president of the Howrah Congress Committee, Howrah district. He was the president. So also, Subramania Bharati took part in Congress activities. And he invited in 1908, when Bipin Chandra Pal, he was very much wanted by the British police. He was put in behind bars and was released. After that, he came to Chennai. That time, Subramania Bharati boldly felicitated him, organized a program. And through all these activities and his writings, castigating the British and attacking all old feudal practices, everything, he came under the scanner of the British administration. They did not like it at a bit. That's why they're about to arrest him and put behind bars. And that could have stopped all his activities. What he was spreading ideas, organizing the people, mobilizing the people. That is why immediately he shifted to Puducherry. Now it is Puducherry, earlier Pondicherry. Why he shifted there? It is ruled by the French people. So he shifted there, out of bounds for the British, and continued his activities. He started publication there, books, then newspaper, everything he started publication. In Puducherry, went on, and Puducherry also, British tried to intervene, stop him, but he was unstoppable. Just like he was bringing out publication in Chennai, now also he continued publication in Puducherry. And same revolutionary ideas is spreading. And British could not finally stop him. He stayed in Puducherry for a period of 10 years. In 1918, he returned back to Tamil Nadu. Then he was put behind bars for a period of 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, they released him. he came out, and point is, coming out also, he continued with the campaign, his thoughts, his ideas. So what I am saying is, he took part in the political movement also. In Tamil Nadu, he tried to rouse the people, spread the ideas. But we should know what has happened is, during those days, this Brahmin association was there. And Brahmin association, traditional, they all through had that upper hand, upper caste, and they are the lawmakers. So that Brahmin association, there's a very, very reactionary. It was sectarian. So at that time, Subramanya Bharati, though he was born in a Brahmin family, he was not at all a part of this society. Even when once he had gone to Calcutta in 1907 to attend the conference of the party, Congress, that time he came across Nivedita, sister Nivedita. She was almost the daughter of Vivekananda, adopted daughter of Vivekananda. He came across Nivedita. Under the impact of Nivedita, of course he was a believer, Subramanya Bharati, but never narrow. In all his political affairs, everywhere was secular. He never allowed his belief to come in the way of his political activity. Absolutely remained secular, just like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We all know Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was out and out secular. Though he was a believer in Kali, he was a believer of Vivekananda, but he never permitted his belief to come in his political movement. Nobody knows it unless we tell. Though again there were people like Bhagat Singh, fighters. Bhagat Singh was absolutely an atheist. But Subramanya Bharati had belief. He was a follower of Vivekananda to that extent, but never allowed his belief to influence his politics. This was Subramanya Bharati. Nor he was influenced by many such ideas of Vivekananda also. Meaning religious beliefs of Vivekananda. He also did not take them at all. This was the character of Subramanya Bharati. And what I am trying to tell, when the Brahmin association was highly reactionary, once Subramanya Bharati went there, severely condemned them, mercilessly condemned. Why you are having sectarian way? When the country calls for unity of all caste, all creed, all religion, why you are having a separate thing, separate caste? It goes to divide the people. He fought them. He came. So also I told, even division as Aryans and Dravidians is not permissible. Why should we be avoided, divided? Whole country should get united. We are all one, Indians. Aryan or Dravidian is a past. Now we don't want it. We should unite. And comrades, what I am trying to tell is, as a reaction to what happened in the Brahmin association, highly reactionary, as a reaction to that, the Dravidian movement took birth in Tamil Nadu. Today also it's going on. We all know it. It came against Brahminism, Brahminical domination. They claimed to be Aryans. This way it was going on. That rift came. And because of that, they could not appreciate ideas of Subramanya Bharati in Tamil Nadu. Very unfortunate, for a long period, this has remained. Though the leaders who gave birth to Dravidian movements, they acknowledged the contribution of Subramanya Bharati undoubtedly, but they could not side with him or uphold him, because on the one hand, he is a believer, and on the other hand, he is opposed to this division of Aryans and Dravidians. He opposed that. He wanted people's unity. Aryan or Dravidian, whatever, upper caste or lower caste, he is not bothered. Hindu or Christians or Muslim, all should unite. Unity is of paramount importance. people, all creed, caste, everybody, unite as Indians. Only then we can earn our freedom. We can have independence movement. This is the cornerstone of Subramania Bharati's thoughts. Very unfortunately, this held sway for long, and even then, some section of the Tamil people, they have tried to use Subramania Bharati, only use him, minus his thoughts. What I understand from the thoughts of Comrade Shivdas Ghosh, whatever I have understood, just like in India also, many talk of Bhagat Singh, many talk of Netaji, but they don't want to follow them. And Shivdas Ghosh held Netaji, Bhagat Singh, everybody in high esteem. This was the uncompromising trend of freedom struggle. We should follow in their footsteps. Only then the next communist movement will grow. That was uncompromising trend in our freedom struggle. And the future struggle for socialist revolution, to overthrow capitalism and to establish socialism. That is the next stage of society. And that is the revolution before us. And Shivdas Ghosh repeatedly pointed out that in our Indian freedom struggle, the compromising section of the leaders, there is a national bourgeoisie, they became compromising towards imperialism as well as feudalism. That's why the feudal culture, ethics, morality, everything remained unfought. Secular humanist ideals did not get established as it happened in USA or in Europe. In India, Comrade Shivdas Ghosh pointed out, the national bourgeoisie did not uphold the banner of social and cultural revolution. That is why most of the thoughts and practices connected with feudalism are still there. It may be caste, it may be religious, or more so women. Question of women. To consider women as second-graded citizens. They are not put on par with men. They are looked down upon. This is old feudal patriarchal society that subjugated. And as Comrade Shivdas Ghosh pointed out, once capitalism is established, they can no more complete this banner of social cultural revolution. They cannot afford it. Not they can do it anymore today. Today, the capitalist class has come to power. National bourgeoisie is in power. They are all the more fanning up all old things, rotten things, dead things. Whatever is dead and gone, they are simply fanning up because they are the main obstacle for social progress today. It is capitalism. No more British imperialism, no more feudalism. Now to conduct the next revolution, that entire responsibility falls on the present generation, the present working class. It is on our shoulders. Now, so Comrade Shivdas Ghosh pointed out, to conduct anti-capitalist revolution, we have to first complete the unfinished task of bourgeois democratic revolution. We have to complete the task of bourgeois democratic revolution, that is social and cultural revolution. There the question of caste, creed, culture, or religion, all these divisions, narrow divisions, what existed in feudalism, feudal disunity, we have to fight them totally, summarily, reject them. Only on that basis, there can be unity of all the exploited masses, whether the working class or the peasantry or the women, students and youth, all should unite on the basis of class. This can be achieved only by accomplishing the social culture revolution. In that, we have been observing the great days of Ishwar Vidyasagar, Bhagat Singh, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Preeti Lata Vadeddar, Matangini Hazra, all whosoever fought during the freedom struggle in an uncompromising way, no compromise either with imperialism or with religion. So also in the same way, we find Subramania Bharati is a noble character with noble thoughts, uncompromising spirit, and thoughts and practices, I think it is very much important for us that the ideas of Subramania Bharati not only we get to know, we cultivate, so that as soon as we complete this task conducive to the anti-capitalist social revolution, the avenue will be opened for the revolution. And comrades, I feel the task is before us today, and I should thank All India leaders of All India Mahila Sangatne. They have given me this opportunity, and I don't know. I request all those who have heard to this. I think there will be many shortcomings, inadequacies, even some wrong things also may be there. More so, I request our Tamil Nadu comrades, those who have listened to this, please write to me, send to me, wherever you found any wrong things or shortcomings. I like to benefit from this. I again thank you all. With these words, I pay my tributes, homage also to Subramania Bharati. With these words, I conclude, thanking you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Radhakrishna. And we are very much enlightened by your analysis on life and struggle and his views about women of Subramania Bharatiya. And dear friends, we are trying to develop a cultural movement that is to democratize the society, secularize the society. Actually, to democratize the relations of men and women. Definitely, Subramania Bharatiya, life and his views help our women's movement very great. We request you, please go through not only Subramania Bharati, Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyaya, Yashwant Chandra Vidyasagar, his life and his struggle, then Netaji, then Bhagat Singh. And in future also we will do such type of programs. Please spread these ideas to your friends and relatives. Let them spread to their friends. This way whole society will be awakened. And this is very urgent task. Ultimately, this society based on injustice will be demolished and new society, a socialist society will be emerged. And we need your help and cooperation for this movement. And we hope definitely we will go ahead. With this, we end this Facebook Live program. Thank you.